Alright everybody, what's up? It's Alex once again with another episode of the EOT News Flash. This is episode 105. This is our Modern Horizons first look. I'm super excited. This set is being called a love letter to Time Spiral and Future Sight, two old sets where they completely threw the rulebook out the window and put in literally whatever the hell they wanted. There's 40 mechanics in this set, and there's so many cards to dig into. We're only barely a week into spoilers, and we already have 70 cards spoiled, and some of them are just mind-blowing. The things that the set is going to do to Modern is absolutely absurd, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. But first, I have to talk a little bit about War of the Spark, one of the most in-depth, crazy formats for Limited that I've played in a very long time. You know, people say that Dominario is pretty great, but like War of the Spark just ratchets it up to 11, and there just seems to be always another thing you can uncover in this format. Case in point, my deck from Friday Night Magic, where I always get to draft my local game store, Dungeon Games. Big shout out to them, Juan and his team, Josh the guys, love the store. But Friday night I went truly off the deep end here, and I ended up in a 5-color monstrosity. This is a deck that I've been reading about online. People say it exists, but you have to have the pieces. You need the Mana Geodes, the New Horizons, the Centaur Nurturers. You need all the fixing you can get to make this deck work, and I'm finally glad to say I did. So just to give a quick rundown of the deck, I first picked the Finale of Revelations, the big X blue draw spell that I thought, well, maybe I can draft some kind of stupid control deck. That's how I like to draft these sets anyway. But the cards just kept flowing to me in every different color, and I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do. So eventually I ended up in this mismatch of a blue-green deck that started splashing reds for Chandra's Pyrohelix, a Domri Anarch of Bolas, Sarkhan's Catharsis, and then I got all these extra green cards in the Snare Spinner, Arlen's Wolf, the Centaur Nurturer, like I mentioned, and then a couple of last-minute picks that I opened up into the God Eternals and got past a Prison Realm, and I just said, hell with it, I can do this, and the deck overperformed like nothing else. An easy 3-0, 6-0 in games. I was absolutely thrilled. A couple of all-star cards here. Obviously, Enter the God of Eternals was absolutely monstrous. I've never seen a card like this before Limited that just does so much, and it was always great to reveal it off of Narset, and my opponent just goes, how the heck are you going to do that? And then I play the Mana Geode, or they see that I have New Horizons in play, and it just goes completely off the rails. Karn's Bastion, I stretched this mana base probably to its limit by only playing islands, forests, and mountains. I didn't really need the black or the white lands simply because I had geodes and I had other mana fixing. But Karn's Bastion, an overperformer in this deck, able to proliferate all of my planeswalkers. I got to activate Casmina multiple times in a single game in the last round. Absolutely absurd. I finished most of my games actually by firing off combinations of Sarkhan's Catharsis and Chandra's Pyrohelix. This deck was dumb. And that's all I'm going to say about it. This format it's truly a format that keeps on giving, and it gives to those who are willing to experiment and push the boundaries of probably what I would say conventional Magic even looks like for a Limited format. So I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am playing with this set, drafting it, playing sealed, playing it in Arena. It is truly the hallmark of a great Magic set, and as good as Dominaria was for Magic and kind of bringing things back, so sort of like that sort of, humdrum, almost Dark Ages that we were in for a while, Dominaria sets War of the Spark really does set a new precedent for Magic sets moving forward. So many cards impacting Standard, Modern, hell, even Legacy we're seeing cards break into. Vintage, and we talked about Narset a couple weeks ago. Truly phenomenal set, and that's where I'm going to stop boasting. But let's go ahead and turn our attention over to Modern Horizons, and let's do one thing real faster. Let's get Bolas out of the way. He doesn't have any place in here, but boom! Let's put Sarah up here, front and send her. And let's go ahead and get some cards up on the screen. Yes, so many cool cards. Now, like I said, there's 70 cards already spoiled. I'm not going to touch all of them today. We're going to leave that for the set reviews. more than likely we're going to do a limited review and an actual modern review, because there's a lot of cards here that are going to have impacts in, obviously modern at large, and probably some good commander cards here as well. So I've got my notes, I got my pen. Let's get started here. I want to talk about Seasoned Pyromancer first. This is one of the first mythics that actually got spoiled this week. It's a 1 red mythic rare 2/2 human shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, you discard 2 cards and then draw 2 cards. For each non-land card discarded this way, create a 1/1 red elemental creature token, which on its face isn't all that impressive, but then 3 red, exile Seasoned Pyromancer from your graveyard and create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. Now note, on a standard playable card, on a standard set, this would not be an instant speed ability. This would be only anytime you could activate a sorcery. So this already, the bar is absolutely in the stratosphere for power level on Seasoned Pyromancer here. I'm looking at these more so not in a really limited perspective right now, but more so the decks it can go into in modern. So I'm going to be referencing a couple of decks. So if you're unfamiliar with the modern decks I'm talking about, definitely jump onto sites like MTG Top 8, Star City Games. There's a lot of good breakdowns on modern decks. So go and check those out, because I'm going to be talking about some things that you might not be too familiar with, as we haven't talked about modern in a pretty long time here on the show. So where does Seasoned Pyromancer actually fit in modern? There's 2 decks that come to mind. The first one is the blue-red Phoenix decks. We had Arclight Phoenix get printed in the recent in Ravnica, Guilds of Ravnica, a card that really broke out into standard and both modern, and just goes absolutely ballistic in modern with so many cheap spells, being able to get in the graveyard super fast and come back and swing for tons of damage out of nowhere. And Seasoned Pyromancer is just another piece of that puzzle, acting as almost additional copies of Faithless Looting. Unfortunately, this is a discard 2, then draw 2, instead of a draw 2, discard 2. But I don't really think it matters, because especially, with the redundancy in that deck, you can afford to ditch a lot of the cards that you might not need, especially with some of those decks now that are running Pyromancer's Ascension. So it really starts counting towards the spells in your graveyard to activate that card and really go off. This card is absolutely insane in that deck. I also see this going into Mardu Pyromancer, a deck that's kind of fallen off of radar in the last couple of months, but definitely has a good shot at coming back with a card like this and a few others that we'll talk about when we actually do our full set review, so be ready for that. In Mardu Pyromancer, you're obviously playing Lingering Souls, you're playing Faithless Looting again, Young Pyromancer. Incremental advantage here, and this is what Seasoned Pyromancer is all about: generating bodies for chump blocking, card advantage. This card's really powerful, and if you have any ways to blink this guy, it gets even more absurd, and I think that might be a key factor for it in limited, but again, we'll talk about that once we actually get to the set review. So Seasoned Pyromancer, already a knockout mythic for this set, and is just showing us the power level that the set is playing with. These are not standard level cards, and I keep having to remind myself as I look at these things, this is not a standard level set, and this is not going to be a set for everybody, and I totally get that. There's tons of ways to play Magic, and this next card we're going to talk about is really, just indicative of that. We've got Flusterstorm, a single blue mana instant at rare, counters target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. Alex, you say that's pretty underwhelming. Well, it's the keyword that's attached to this card, Storm. If you're not familiar with Storm, Storm says when you cast the spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this is how the blue-red Storm deck kills in Modern with Empty the Warrens and Grape Shot. And so if you've got a bunch of spells on the stack and you've got a Flusterstorm on your hand and you just need to blow your opponent out, fire this off and create copies that are targeting each individual copy, or I should say each spell that's on the stack before it, and completely blow your opponent out. Super powerful. This was originally printed all the way back in Commander 2013, as has been a legacy staple for so long, and it's finally coming to Modern. Is it too powerful? I don't know. The only downside to this card, and one that I'm not super happy about, is that this is the Buy a Box promo for this set. It is not actually in the set at large. Apparently got added to the card file a little bit too late in development when they already had a lot of the blue rares and mythics already filled out. So they are putting this straight as the blue Buy a Box promo. As a point in Wizards' favor, though, it's not going to be foil, which I think is super important. So we're not going to have a debacle like we did with Nexus of Fate and having to use mountains as proxy. So a pretty cool way to get around that. Not super happy on the implementation, but there still is a lot of upside for having Flusterstorm in the format. It's only $30 right now too. It was reprinted in Iconic Master, so the price has gone down a good bit on these when it was originally $70. I don't know how low it's going to go with the influx of Modern Horizons, as this is only a buy-a-box promo, so there is a finite supply of these existing in the world. So if you need copies of this for your Modern decks, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, definitely get those before the supply dries up and this goes back up in price. This is an easy chase card for this set. But where does Flusterstorm actually go in Modern? So obviously we can look at Legacy decks and kind of see where they put it. So any control deck, any tempo deck like Delver decks, Grixis Control plays this in Legacy, and I think that we're going to see that be the same direction into Modern as well. I can see copies of this making its way into Blue-White Control, Jeskai, Esper Control. Any control variant actually can probably make a pretty good use of this, as well as Blue-Red Storm itself. What better deck to counter your own counter spells than with a spell that had its namesake mechanic on there. I can also see this going into Blue-Red Phoenix as well. They cast a lot of spells so they can get their Phoenixes on board on a very early turn, and to stop that last key spell before they can go off. This is going to be a great way of protecting those spells as they go off. So it's a really powerful card, potentially dangerous, but I think a format like this really needs to push at the boundaries so we can actually get to a point in this format where we can really flex the power level of these cards. Next up, we've got a pair of cards on this line. Actually, we've got 3 cards I want to talk about here. And the first one is Astral Drift. This is a 2 and a white enchantment at rare. Whenever you cycle Astral Drift or cycle another card while Astral Drift is on the battlefield, you may exile target creature. And if you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step, and itself has cycling for 2 and a white. Cycling bit lets you discard the card after paying the cost and drawing a card. Now, if you go back and watch my video about the cards that I wanted to see reprinted in Modern Horizons, one of my top picks was Astral Slide, and this is a better version of that. Astral Slide did not have cycling itself, so this is a self-contained engine here, and I'm really hoping that we do get to see a Lightning Rift-esque effect come into the format as well to pair up with Astral Drift here. But already just the things you can do with this, I'm thinking we can take a look at the cards that were in the Astral Slide decks of Extended way back in like 2005. We had things like Eternal Witness, Kitchen Finks, we could do like not Rebel Belt Raiders, but I'm blanking on the Echo land destruction guy, Future Sight. I forget his name all of a sudden. But I definitely think there is an opportunity here for like a Naya or maybe a Bant Blink deck. We obviously are going to need a lot more cycling enablers, so I expect to see a cycle of common cycling lands be put into the format, because as it stands right now, we don't have a ton of options in Modern for cycling. Obviously, we had the cycling lands that got printed in Amonkhet, but I don't think that's quite enough to really make this deck be a thing. So I do expect to see a common cycle of maybe like Barrenmore, that cycle returning to the format, which would be pretty cool. And this card there's so much power in it. I don't think it's going to be a tier 1 deck, but as far as an F&M deck goes, this could be pretty cool here. Now, this next card, however, will absolutely be a tier 1 defining Modern card. This is Force of Negation, and I believe this was spoiled like day 1. Like this Monday, this hit the scene, and everyone lost their mind. So Force of Negation is 1 blue instant at rare, and here's where things get wild. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. So this is almost Force of Will. It's a Force of Will for your opponent's turn, which I think makes this card a lot more interesting for Modern implications. I think Force of Will is just too powerful. But what this card does, it counters target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So much text on this card, so much power. So obviously my mind immediately blew up when I saw this card. But there's a full cycle of these Force of cards, We've seen the black, the green, and the white one, the blue so far. I imagine we'll see the red one at some point during this week, but they all do kind of an iconic thing that those colors actually do. And we'll talk about those obviously during the set review. But where does Force of Negation go? And so obviously it goes into any control deck. It's just a fact of the matter. If you're on the draw against, let's say, Tron or Humans, and they play a turn 1 Expedition map or a turn 1 Aether Vial, you just, nope, Force of Negation it. And it really... I think this is going to be a good balancing card for the format because there's so many things that can go wrong on turns 1, 2, and 3 for control decks as they're sort of like maybe they're establishing their mana, they're setting up maybe a Planeswalker or a card draw engine, like Search for Ascanta, and you really don't have the ability to like play a 2-drop, a Search for Ascanta, and pass your opponent who might untap and kill you. So having a card like Force of Negation exists in the format. While it is card disadvantage, the power level and the tempo you can gain back is so huge for this format that I think it's going to be a really defining card in the format. The fact that it's rare and not mythic is absolutely huge. This won't be some $50 card, and it's absolutely imperative. This is a card that needs to be in circulation. Other card decks that this can go into, Ad Nauseam, the wacky storm variant that actually has the ability to kill you on your own turn, in your own upkeep, and that's where sort of that if it's not your turn text really comes into play. So the Ad Nauseam deck can sort of pass the turn and say, okay, in your upkeep, I'm going to start firing off my Ad Nauseams and actually kill you with them with Force of Negation and backup. This is a super, super flexible card in that deck and a very scary card in that deck as well. But I think this is going to be, like I said, a defining card for Modern moving forward. For so long we haven't really had a counterspell aside from Cryptic Command, which, format has a lot to pay in Modern right now. It's just absolutely a fact. But now that we're having a card like this, it's really going to supplant some of those weaker counterspells in the format that we might see a real shift away from how control decks are being built. We already have. We're seeing these 9, 10 Planeswalker decks in our format now, and I think this is going to be a really important part to play it and then protect it on your opponent's turn. Very, very cool. I could gush on this card forever, but we have to move on, obviously. To our next card, Goblin Engineer. 1 in a red, Goblin Artificer, a rare. It's a 1/2. This is basically, I believe it's a Goblin Tinkerer, I think is what I'm thinking of here for Legacy. When Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it in your graveyard, and then shuffle your library. Pay 1 and tap, pay red and tap it. Sacrifice an artifact and return target artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This card is super, super potent. So already I can think of the mono red prison decks. I can think of Grixis War prison decks that are absolutely going to play this so they can cycle some of their less effective, maybe their cantrip artifacts, if they're still playing like Ichor Wellsprings to get card draw going, to bring back an ensnaring bridge, or perhaps, a Chalice of the Void for 0, or an Engineered Explosives for 0, and maybe they can put some counters on it somehow. And this card is just so flexible to be able to tutor things into your graveyard and then get them back. They're only playing artifacts that cost 3 and less in Modern, obviously. So this card is super dangerous, super cool, and really opens up another avenue for those decks to keep their engines going, as terrifying as that is, but that's okay. All right, next up, we've got a card that I'm shocked they actually decided to print. And this is Giver of Runes. Now, if you go back and watch my video about cards I did not want to see printed into Modern, Mother of Runes was one of them. And they've basically given us Mother of Runes, except Giver of Runes is a 1/2. It's a core cleric. It's rare. It's a single white mana. You can tap it. And here's a very key difference. Another target creature you control gains protection from colorless and or from the color of your choice until the end of turn. So this can stop attacks from Eldrazi, Wormcoil engines. It can stop things being targeted by Karn. Really flexible. But the fact that it targets only another makes this thing so much safer for Modern. Be able to protect itself from bolts, paths, and pushes just make this card super unrealistic to play against. And the fact that it's a core as well is also quite nice. Obviously, if it's a human, it would slot right into 5-color human decks, which It probably will anyway, because they can still use, Ancient Ziggurat and Cavernous Souls to cast this thing. Obviously, it's going to tighten up their mana just a little bit more, but I don't think it's going to be to the point where they can't play a card like this, because this thing is so powerful. So humans, like I mentioned, Death and Taxes, both the mono white and the white black versions that splash some of the Eldrazi cards in it. That deck is going to be absolutely the home for Giver of Runes here, and this is going to be an absolute chase card right out of the set. It blows my mind just how many good cards and so many valuable cards there already are on the surface. Obviously, this is going to be a print to demand set, which is fine, which is going to keep the cost of cards low, but I don't think there's going to be a disappointing pack that you open. Just given what we've seen so far, I wouldn't be disappointed to open up any of these cards so far. So Giver of Runes, another really powerful card here, a great variant on a classic legacy card coming to Modern, and I cannot be more excited for a card like this. Absolutely love it. Next up, we've got a card that I'm genuinely happy to see here. It's Nimble Mongoose. We last saw Nimble Mongoose in Ultimate Masters, and it's back again, finally in Modern. It's a single green creature. It's a Mongoose. It's a common. It's a 1/1. It has Shroud. So this is like Hexproof, but nothing can target this. Not even your own spells or abilities can target this. And it has Threshold. Now, Threshold reads, if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, this card gets an additional effect. So Mongoose's effect here is that it gets +2/+2. Very powerful. So we used to see Mongoose a lot in Legacy, but it's really kind of fallen away as the old Teamer or Rug Delver decks have really fallen by the wayside and really been replaced by Blue, Red, and Grixis variants. But I think there might be an opportunity for Nimble Mongoose to exist in Modern in something like a Teamer or a Sultai Delver tempo kind of build here. So obviously we're playing cards, maybe like Vapor Snags, Lightning Bolts, Fatal Pushes, Thought Scours, Snapcaster Mages, obviously. There's another card in this set that I think might slot into that deck perfectly that we'll talk about later. But yeah, to get Among Us online so quickly, and even on turn 1, it's not that most embarrassing of a play. And just to be able to get so big so quickly. The only issue is that this thing really competes with Angler. So that could be a bit of an issue there, because the Threshold ability 100% conflicts with Delve. So I don't know if the Sultai build can exist, but I do think there might be a Teamer version that could exist here that gets to play things like Young Pyromancer, maybe some Hooting Mandrills, Snapcaster Mages, obviously, Tarmogoyfs, things of that nature. I think this would be a cool deck. Maybe not, a tier deck, but again, one of those really cool F&M decks that gets to play a similar game plan to an old Legacy classic. Obviously we don't have things like Wasteland and Daze, but I think that's okay here. There's still plenty of cool interactive cards in those colors that I think could really make this card shine in Modern. So super cool here. Now, gonna skip down a little bit because there's a ton of cards already obviously spoiled here, but we'll get to them all eventually, because I want to talk about, I'm just going to tease everybody right here with all these cards I'm just passing by, talk about Snowlands. Now, the last time we saw Snowlands was in Cold Snap? Shoot, I forget. But yeah, so these are the basic lands of the set, and I'm going to go ahead and put myself a little point in the win column, because last week I called that there would be no basic lands in this set. These are snow basics. I call that a win. Take it or leave it. So basically, these are basic lands, except they have the snow sort of super type on them, if you will. They really don't do anything other than count towards a couple of cards that we've seen that actually care about snow permanents. We've seen a couple of snow creatures. We've seen a couple of cards that require snow mana to activate. So eventually, I imagine we'll see all of those cards revealed, but I'm just super hyped to see these in a full art frame, no less, and easily accessible, because the old Snowlands are quite expensive, actually. The old ones from Ice Age command a pretty penny, and they are gorgeous, and I think these arts are just absolutely fantastic here. So I don't know how much of a role these are going to play in the formats for Limited, but I think they're super cool, and the fact that these, I believe, are going to be one in each pack will give you a great opportunity to get a nice collection of these going. So definitely pimp out your commander decks, whatever you're going to do with these. Very, very cool stuff here. I'm tempted to use these for draft. I don't know who's going to gripe about me using snow lands and non-snow formats, but hey, whatever. Not my problem. That's for future as Alex to worry about. And the last couple cards I want to talk about tonight, these are all lands. And this first cycle here is a sort of a callback to Horizon Canopy, which was originally printed in Future Sight, the green-white land that you can pay 1 life and tap it for either a green or a white. You can pay 1, tap it, sacrifice it, and draw a card. And that card was actually part of a cycle, Nimbus Maze, River of Tears, Graven Cairns. Those, I thought that was like a self-contained cycle, so I never expected to see more of them. And here we have the enemy cycle of them. I figured they wouldn't do the allied colored cycle because they weren't going to print any modern legal cards in this set, so obviously the alternative here was to do the enemy colors here. So we have black, white, blue, green, red, blue, red, white, and black, green. They all do the same thing. You tap it and pay 1 life to add either a color, one of the colors of their identity. You can pay 1, tap it, sacrifice it, and draw a card. Immediately, there's a couple of decks that I think this play can already go into. The black-white one obviously slots right into the Death and Taxes builds. The red-white cop version goes right into Burn. There might be some room for the black-green one to go into the black-green rock decks. Maybe Jund, maybe. I'm not too sure about that one. And the blue-green one, even there might be some room for that in Infect, perhaps. All of these are really good just for an extra little bit of card filtering in the late game. The life loss, when you have to pay for mana, it's what it is. But these cards are super powerful, and I think even in like monocolor decks, perhaps, you definitely can play these just because they are such good utility in the late game. It just mitigates flood very, very nicely. And again, like cards like this, one of the safest sort of things to keep and hold as new sets get printed are the lands. I was looking at some of the temples from EDHX I was building, and those were like less than $1 after they rotated out, but all of them now $3-4. So I'm just looking at lands like this. These are going to be eternally playable. Absolutely keep these, hold on to these. So there's your financial speculation for the day. And our very last card that we're going to talk about today, this is a card that got spoiled, I believe, on Monday as well. This is Prismatic Vista, and this is a card that I just kind of looked at and went, this needs to exist? But then the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. So Prismatic Vista is a rare land. You may tap it and pay 1 life, sacrifice Prismatic Vista, and search your library for a basic land card. Put it on the battlefield and shuffle your library. Now this is missing a very key line of text. Enters the battlefield tapped. So if you think about all the other cards that have ever done this, Evolving Wilds and Termorphic Expanse specifically, those are common, obviously. They get any basic land, but it puts it into play tapped. But here, this is a fetch land. This is actually a fetch land for you guys. So, I know there's plenty of people out there. I've got plenty of friends who want to get into Modern, who want to play, tier, 1 or 2 decks if you're into that kind of nomenclature. But they look at the price of the mana bases and go, I can't afford this. I can't spend $400 on Scalding Tarns. I get that. I totally get that. It's stupid that much money, but that's the world we live in. But for these, 1 and 2 color decks who just want a little bit of thinning, this is it. This is your fetch land, for blue-white control. Maybe you don't want to shell out money for a playset of, wow, I just forgot, Flooded Strand, there we go. If you don't want to shell out money for Flooded Strand, here's your alternative, because you don't need to go get a Hollowed Fountain every single time. Go get your basics. It's not as good, but they weren't going to make a better fetch land. But this is a really cool variant. So any 2-color deck for Burn, for blue-white control, green-black rock, blue-red Phoenix, even monocolor decks that just need a little bit of filtering. I love seeing those mono-black Devotion decks, that play Phyrexian Obliterators and stuff like that. It's so wild, but cards like this were absolutely made for those kind of decks, and you maybe even get away with like 1 or 2 in a 3-color deck if you maybe don't have all of your fetch lands. A card like this just seems so obvious when you look at it and you go, yeah, a card like this needs to exist for Modern because, like I said, the format, it's as expensive as it has been, it's still quite expensive. And, the last place you want to be hit is your mana base because the mana bases for Modern are absolutely crucial. So I'm super hyped to see this card. It's going to go into so many decks. It's not going to create any decks, but that's okay because cards like this just have to exist, like I said, in Modern. And it's just another good reason that this set is just clearing the bar and setting brand new levels for, these supplementary products to really hit. I look back at Ultimate Masters, Iconic Masters, Masters 25, and a lot of them just kind of fell flat for a number of reasons for me. I wasn't interested in getting the cards them. I just didn't care. But a set like this, it's opening up the floodgates for the design space. There are cards in this set that they could never print in Standard, and that's kind of the point here. And I could not be more excited. So as we get closer to the release date, which is going to be, I believe June 17th, second week of June, I think. It's coming very, very quickly. So we should see full spoilers going up probably by the end of the first week of June. And then the set release is the following week, if I'm not mistaken. So if your stores are holding events for this, whether it's a draft or sealed, sign up now. You're going to have a ton of fun playing this set. And if you're a Modern player like I am, this is absolutely the set you've been waiting for because there's so many cards for so many decks, and I could not be more excited. Every day I get up early in the morning and I'm always looking on Reddit, looking for another spoiler, and I'm just losing my mind. I'm just absolutely over the wall, over the moon about this set, and I can't wait to play with these cards. So, I could go on forever and talk about all 70 cards, but I'm not going to do that. That's best saved for later. My voice is best saved for later. Quick note, I am going on vacation next week, so I'm going to take a little bit of a hiatus. We're going to be back the first week of June, actually. So June 5th, we'll see another episode. I'm going to take next week off, going on a little vacation. Going to go do some sightseeing, some hiking, some whitewater rafting. I'm pretty excited about that. Haven't had a vacation since Christmas, and, no rest for the wicked. So yes, thank you so much for watching, guys. I've been, super happy with what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks. We're hitting episode 100. Having all the guys on last week from Dungeon, having Chris, having Rocco, having Devin, having Drew on a couple times so far. It's been a great couple of weeks. I'm super excited for you guys to keep watching and keep seeing what we're coming out with. There is more Commander in the Dungeon coming. There's more videos about Commander. There's a lot to do right now, so it's all coming, and I appreciate you guys checking it out and commenting and sharing everything. It means a lot. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments, what are you excited to play with in Modern Horizons? Are you going to be getting to Modern for the very first time? What are your favorite cards? What do you hope to see? There's so much on the horizon. That was my one. I'm only getting one per episode to do that joke, and I'm done. So thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks. Have a great night.